Hello and welcome to this episode of Pass the Mic, Let's Talk, a podcast by the Africa Center for Ideas program, which is an initiative by Jade Communications. I'm your host Mel Miendo, and on this episode we will be talking about the country's fight against corruption, what strides have been made so far, and if really we will realize this war on corruption. Joining me on this episode is Dr. Washingtone Makodingo, and he is a devolution and governance expert, and we'll be talking about this issue. It's great to have you on this show. Thank you so much for joining us in this podcast. We know 2020 has been that year. Some call it a unique year, some call it a strange year, because of the COVID-19 pandemic. What would you say has been the direct effect on the war on corruption?
Thank you very much, Mel, for having me. 2020 is the year that it shouldn't have been, for a lot of people. I mean, it's been a mess, one of those years, and it has affected every aspect of our lives. Probably positively in terms of the war on corruption, because then, of course, there hasn't been a lot of opportunity for people to really be corrupt, so to speak. But also, in terms of the government calendar and the things that have happened, I mean, it came around March. So usually in government, around March, the financial year is just beginning to be wound up. National government agencies that have not committed money usually they'll be returning money to Treasury for the allocation. So of course, and then when it came, there was this order to close all government offices for a couple of weeks. A lot of people are working from home. So
the lockdown, social distancing.
A lot of government offices, and of course a lot of government offices started getting COVID, so a lot of them kept being closed. We know courts around the country have been closed quite a bit for a long period of time. Even now, I mean, I know the Supreme Court building is closed because of COVID, and a lot of people keep testing positive for COVID. So I would say, in terms of corruption, we won't really know much until the end of this year, when the Auditor General begins to look at the books of accounts. But I suspect it might not be as bad as previously.
But in many ways it has been affected.
Yeah, in many ways it has been, especially if you're looking at the prosecution side. If you were to look at what the ODPP and the guys who do prosecutions do, it has affected a lot of court appearances.
Yes. And just taking from what you've mentioned, last year we saw so many high-profile cases being taken to court, and so the expectation for this year would be that we would get some of these conviction rates. But just before we even think about conviction and all that, would you say there has been a bit of laxity in terms of fighting corruption?
There is the war against corruption, but it doesn't mean that people have stopped being corrupt. It doesn't mean that people have stopped seeing opportunity to steal public funds at every avenue. And we've seen this the world over, even in South Africa. People use occasions like this, pandemics and emergencies like this, thinking that because of the emergency, people will not notice. That the country will not notice, that we will all be looking for N95s. So nobody's really caring about how much you procure it for. So guys take opportunities like those to slip in a couple of things under the radar, inflated prices.
That specific issue, even just looking at a pandemic, and
it not just cancer, by the way. The county governments were given 5 billion shillings by the Minister of Health, by Treasury through the Minister of Health. That was split so to allow them to prepare for COVID.
So
I mean, counties got in hundreds of millions. I know Kakamega got 270 million and stuff. So basically, what happened, and I hope an investigation will be done. You will go to counties. I traveled to a couple of them during that period. You find guys are spraying streets and roads. Some people are employed, they are standing on the road, taking people's temperature. And I'm thinking, this is the most useless waste of public resources. So I have this suspicion that when we do the audit, you'll find half of that money was used in spraying places. I mean, if you have sprayed you can claim you sprayed the whole town every day. And there will be no way of auditing it. It's not like you can go back and sample the road and see if there was spraying here. So, it's one of those things. Probably when this is over, there might be a huge scandal coming out.
I think so. I really think
the
so.
Emergency
Especially as you say, because the auditing is where we'll see, all these counties coming in and saying, we did this, we did that, but when you look at the audit,
people in government usually say, if you want to steal money, the easiest way to steal money is to offer services. Yeah, because things like capital projects.
Yes.
If you're going to buy a house or construct a road, it is seen.
Yes.
But if you organize a workshop, you can't come tomorrow and audit. The people who were in the workshop have already gone. So even if you said you had offered everyone a package, a gift bag worth 5,000 shillings each, unless you call every participant.
So really there's no accountability.
It's very difficult to account for monies like those, unless there is actual physical infrastructure that you can see and then audit. So that is where usually conferences, hotels,
One of the major things that happened even in November of this year is the release of the report by the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. So it was presented to President Uhuru Kenyatta, and it's also publicly available. And one of the issues that has been in that report is the conviction rates. According to this report, we have seen, and many people have been talking about it, the 63% conviction rate that the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions speaks about, especially in the first half of 2020. What would your opinion be on that? Per se, the accuracy of this report and even conviction rates?
So, first, I have no reason to doubt the report. It's a statutory report that is required by law, and one would imagine that they actually give accurate figures. How they interpret those figures might be something else. But I've looked at the report myself.
Yes.
Now, usually, when people talk about DPP, a lot of people talk about the office in relation to corruption. But corruption is not the only thing.
There are many other things they do.
The DPP is the sole office responsible for prosecution of everything from a chicken thief to a trafficker, to sex, child abuse, sex offenders, to murder, to homicide, and all these things. And for a very long time, their report in terms of what else other than corruption has been exemplary. They have conviction rates of 93, 94% in terms of the other cases that they present. And usually there is quite a bit, they are open and shut cases. If it's murder, it's murder. Someone was killed, there are witnesses. Now if you are a child trafficker, there was a child you took, or there is a woman you forced to go to Saudi Arabia. It's fairly easy and fairly simple. Economic crimes are not that simple. Because economic crimes first are committed by people who know they are committing a crime.
Exactly.
And who have every intention to actually hide everything that they're doing. So the perpetrator usually, the ones that are
by the time you get to the
ones that are bad, you can't even find the perpetrator. Money was lost. The only thing you have is an infamous log that money was paid to so and so, but you can't really audit the perpetrator that much. So it's one of those things that requires quite a bit of time in terms of investigations, a lot of expertise in terms of prosecution, even building a proper case, a case that can actually be taken to court. Tends to be difficult. My focus will be in terms of the report. Not just, the first half year, it's usually easier to tout the most visible. But also, I would tend to imagine that Haji has been in office now this is the third year, I think.
Yes, from 2018
from 2018.
when he was appointed.
So, and when you get into office, there are a lot of things that he initiated that were not there. You look at it, some of these things, and you wonder what the previous DPP and the
was doing.
So what you want to see, because first corruption cases take a long time. I saw a conviction earlier this year for a case that was logged in 2005. That's a 15-year period.
And there's also the backlog of cases.
There's also the backlog of cases. But I would be interested in seeing the progress is made over the last 3 years in terms of the quality of cases he presents. Now you determine the quality of cases he presents, not just with the conviction rate, but also with the rate of acquittals.
And you've seen the rate of acquittals also in the report.
And you've seen it has moved from 47% to now 35%. With very low withdrawals. What that tells you is that the quality of investigations is improving, and the quality of cases the DPP is presenting in court is also improving, and that is something that, in the wider scheme of things, could actually be as a result of new focus, in terms of new approach to corruption cases and other cases, which is something that we've been some of us have been asking for a very long time. Because there are jurisdictions that we are borrowing from that have a wholesome approach to prosecution. Now, here, before the new constitution, even a police officer, an inspector could take you to court. They are police prosecutors. They will just arrest you and take you to court without reference to anyone, unless it was a capital crime, in which case now you needed the authority of the Attorney General to prosecute. And occasionally, whenever there was someone high profile that the AG needed to let go, once in a while it would come out of whatever hiding place he was in and declare and only prosecute. And then go back to hiding wherever he was. But the consolidation of all prosecution under the OTPP has improved the quality of the prosecution that go forward. Because then, it needs to give authority and needs to look at the files. At the beginning, you could remember, especially when Tobiko was in office, there was all this tug of war where EACC would bring a file, it would be taken back, there was a back and forth for years, for a year, even two, which some of us think was choreographed. Then a file would come from DCI, it would land on the OTPP's office, and it would be returned. And they'll be back on and forth for a very long time until people give up.
And yet all these are investigative agencies.
And all these are investigative. They are in the justice and law and order sector. I think what the DPP has done, and which is what some of us have been advocating for a long time, is to copy the US system, or even the serious fraud office system in the UK. Where, in the US, for example, at the federal level, the state attorney, who is the person in charge of, whenever this first decides what to investigate, decide that we want an investigation here, and allocates a state attorney and several other attorneys to the case, who then direct the investigators in terms of what they want. So you look at a case wholesomely, you sit on the table and say, here, we need more evidence, so get for me this procurement file. If you get it, look at it, this is what you're looking for. So that then by the time the file is ready, there is no back and forth. Everyone has done their job. DCI has done their job, EACC have done their job, KRA have done their job, and other members in the multi-agency task team have all done their job. So that when the file lands on the table of the DPP,
you can't go back again and start asking, this has not been done, this one.
In fact, doesn't even look at it, because the person who was in charge was an officer of the DPP. So he just comes and he gives authority on the go immediately. And we've seen this happening, where guys are arrested, or a case is presented to DPP from EACC today, and in the evening he has released a statement saying, I've directed the IG to arrest the following person and present them in court. And that, in my opinion, is the way to go, especially for investigations that require multi-agency approach, like corruption, like economic crimes, because you need to talk to the banks, so you need central bank involved, their banking fraud unit involved, you need KRA involved in terms of taxes, you probably need some intelligence from NIS, you need a proper investigation from DCI, and even cooperation if you need international warrants. And all that is put together in a team that when they are done and they say, Bas, Mali tumefika, we think we are good.
And even when you're speaking about the multi-agency task team, because this is not just the office of the DPP, it comes in play with the DCI, the EACC and all this. But I want us to also think about the judiciary, because they too, they're the ones that the cases are taken to them, the cases are taken to the courts. And in this year, we've seen about maybe 26 corruption cases just in 2020, and about 20 of them were concluded. What would you say is the role that the judiciary is now playing from what was before to what it is now?
I think for a long time, for a very long time, I think until the president really pleaded a couple of years back, for a long time the judiciary was the biggest bottleneck in terms of the fight against corruption. For two reasons. One, I think they're just magistrates and judges who made it their mission to look for money out of suspects, so that the case will drag in court forever. You will file a case today, and then you come for pre-trial conference in 6 months. Then you are given a hearing a year from now. Then your lawyers will come and ask for a continuance, and you'll get another year. By the time it's actually sitting down to be prosecuted, it's 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line. Look at the person you are prosecuting has died. And the left office records have been destroyed. So I think one of the things that we've seen, not all the judges or all the magistrates, but part of the things that has happened, and it didn't even just happen under MAT, it also happened under the National Council for Administrative Justice. where now the judiciary is represented, or the ombudsman is represented, and other bodies, that a deliberate decision was made. That when corruption cases come before us, we will hear them continuously for us as long as possible, so that then they are disposed of first. Of course, lawyers with their trickery, and I think the legal fraternity, not just the judiciary, the legal fraternity itself has played a major role in terms of shielding corruption suspects. But we are seeing a bit of improvement, especially at the magistrates' courts, but even at the constitutional courts. I mean, the judges like Justice Omudi, Mbinguki, the Odongas have told suspects, literally, that you cannot use the courts to hide from facing the consequences of your actions. Yeah, and there is a case that went all the way to the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court said, no. The DPP has a right to come to your home or come to your office and get documents that require to be investigated. I mean, because there's a judgment that said that you inform the suspect that you are about to raid their home or to raid their office. That you must inform a suspect beforehand before you raid them. I mean, it beats the whole purpose, because they will hide and they will destroy all that documentation.
You won't even find them if you're planning to raid
you won't even find. I mean, so I think there's been quite a bit of progress, a lot of progressive magistrates and judges. And you've seen what they have even done with county governments, where governors have been barred from actively going to their offices and interfering with the investigations. So I think with time and with a lot of focus on corruption and the public opinion, the public opinion and the mood is also to go after corrupt people. And we've seen some big time judgments, especially recently. There was one about on Wakungu, and that was major.
And people didn't expect it, because the norm had been that these cases would lag and stay in court for long. But then now, when these kind of convictions are made and these kind of judgments are made, then it even gives the public a bit more confidence.
Yeah, it was a landmark judgment in every aspect. You lose 350 million of taxpayers' money, you pay 700 million.
Imagine, exactly.
I mean, for me, I think that case was a hallmark of what you want to see in terms of the speed, and the kind of judgment that comes out that deters corruption. Because you remember at the beginning, you asked me why the KEMSAs and all these are still happening. It is because a lot of people still think they can get away with it. And they're like, hata nikichajiwa leo, I mean, it probably will take 5, 6, 7 years down the line, I'm still in the court.
But things are changing. Things have changed.
Things have changed.
Yeah,
that thing hit people really bad. And if you had 3, 4, 5 of those, then when you're about to take 1 million shillings, you're thinking, okay, I'm taking 1 million shillings to award a tender for 50 million. If I'm convicted, I'll have to pay 100 million. Is the 1 million worth it?
It's not.
Yeah? And I think in a war on graft, the biggest asset you can have is the deterrence. That people know that if I steal, I will be caught. If I am caught, the sentence will be so heavy.
It'll be more detrimental to you even stealing that little.
Exactly, because I mean, what do guys take? You are awarding a contract of 100 million and you're asking for 10%. To award a contract regularly to someone. Okay, you take the 10 million. You will be charged. If you're found guilty, the law requires you to pay twice as much money as was lost. BBI is even proposing more stiffer penalties, saying 3 times the amount. So you took 10 million to award a 100 million shilling contract, and then you are ending up to paying 300 million shillings in terms of fine.
Yeah, because that never used to happen before.
It never used to happen. I mean, they will go to court and at least on bail of 50,000 shillings.
But even when we talk about looting public money, just in that report, we saw that it's about 224 billion shillings from 2018 to 2020. Cumulative, and this is at the end of June 30th of this year. And these are public officers. We talk about governors, senators, all these high-profile individuals who are stealing this money, and yet it's the same government that is fighting corruption. So, do you think Kenyans are being fooled somewhere, or is it just the case of not all the fruits in the basket are rotten? There are some that are, some that are not.
The government is a huge institution. The government is a very big institution, especially at the national level. At the county level, if there was money stolen, and the governor said they don't know, it will be a lie.
Yeah.
Because there is no major contract awarded in any county government that the governor doesn't say that's fine. At the national government, you have a monolith, you have a humongous thing. someone could be stealing in Wajir, yeah, and the minister will have no way of knowing. Yeah, even the PS will give an AI and just forget about it. So of course, at the top, there's a bit of clarity in terms of the fight against corruption. But even at that level, I mean, you've seen the war that faced the lifestyle audit,
yes,
and the kind of political storm it went through. You've seen governors being arrested and CSs being arrested, and people are saying our tribe is being victimized, as if they stole the money and called the tribe together. So we've seen all this happening, and there's quite a bit of war against the war graft, especially from politicians, because it's fairly easy to just say we are politically targeted, they are targeting our community, they are targeting our tribe, they want to remove us, and that then gives you cover. Then the following weekend you go to Harambee and you give 10 million shillings. And the people are happy, they'll demonstrate, they say, Kumbe, they are actually fighting our person, without necessarily asking where that money actually comes from.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, the public is in the mood to fight corruption. Though sometimes I think as Kenyans, we only hate corruption when we are not the ones benefiting. A lot of us put in those similar positions will steal exactly the same way.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, because the only reason a lot of Kenyans hate corruption.
In Kenyans.
No, but it is true. I mean, we've seen this even historically.
Yes.
The guys, the early 90s, the ones who were fighting corruption, the early 90s, fighting Moi, came into the Kibaki government and they stole more money in 5 years than Moi had stolen in 20. Yeah. So
it's getting worse.
It is only corruption to a lot of people. It is only corruption when I am not benefiting. When I am benefiting, you say
it's not.
There is no
you
corruption.
You start saying, oh, it's tribal.
Yeah. So guys are just because then why then would you find so many people congregating around politicians who everybody knows are stolen money?
Yeah.
But they're congregating around them, they're asking for handouts, they're asking for all these things, and they're demonstrating on the streets to defend them. They'll tell you there are places you go to Kenya today. Like now, you can't take the word corruption to Central, whatever Drift Valley. They'll tell you, afadhali aliiba na
akarudisha. Do you think it's because wananchi have gotten to that point where so much money has been stolen, so much of public money has been stolen, until they're like, this fighting corruption business, we don't even know if this war will really be realized. So would you call it citizen apathy, or would you say that it's just because this is how Kenyans are? No, but the citizens themselves cannot. Us as wananchi, we also can't escape responsibility. We are the ones who put pressure on these people. As long as the moment you hear someone is in some office that is responsible for money, something, suddenly is the guest of honor in all Harambees, is the one you reach out to when your person is in hospital, the first, and you expect him to give you money. Whenever there is a funeral, you expect him to contribute the most amount of money. Whenever you are stuck with school fees, is the person you are going to. So, of course, societal pressure, because people expect you to be successful. Yeah. So they expect you to have money. And if you twice, 3 times, 4 times they ask and you are not giving it, you will not be re-elected. You will not be re-elected. Wanasema huyu hata tulimtuma huko. So where is the problem really? It's a societal problem. It's societal. Because even when we say MPs are paid a lot of money, I have a lot of friends who are MPs, and they can't even buy you a drink. They are poor of the. There is a phone. The phone wananchi know. If they switch it on like this, for 5 minutes, you find requests for money worth 1 million shillings, and they are all genuine requests. Mtoto amekwama kwa nyumba, I have a hospital bill, I have this and this and this, and if you don't respond, the people will look for there's someone actively campaigning in your constituency, and he has money, probably stolen money, probably some drug money, probably wash, but there is someone who is offering something you're not offering. Yeah. So that's societal pressure. And then of course catches up with you. But also society expects that if you are a senior person in government, you should be living in Karen, you should be flying a chopper once in a while. So are we blaming society for the kind of corruption we are seeing in this country? No, it is. I don't think we are blaming society, but I think it's our perception of public service. Yeah, because in other jurisdictions, public service is a thankless job. Yeah. The money paid is very little, and nobody actually expects handouts from you. You can't go to the US and ask a congressman for a handout. In fact, they live such simple lives. They even live. You find in a studio apartment or a 1-bedroom apartment, they are living
congressmen. Because DC is also quite expensive. But
they take public. They use public transport.
They use public transport, or they pool. The Fed senators are pooling 3, 4.
Hey, imagine that happening in Kenya. It's impossible.
First of all, if you even heard that your MP lives in Umoja,
you're like, there's a problem.
And you're like, nobody respects you. They expect you to be living in Karen, to be living in Runda. If you're doing really badly, you live in Lavington. But then people start thinking, who are you? And yet, they're really struggling other than their salary. So unless you want them to come back and steal CDF, which then is the pressure that then is on them.
But even as you rightly say, because we know President Uhuru Kenyatta wants to leave this legacy of him having fought corruption in this country. And you say, yes, it's true. There, especially at the top tier level of government, we know that there are those who are very keen on this. But do you think it's really trickling down to grassroots level, pale chini pale mwananchi huko? Do you think that it'll be realized at that level?
Having worked in a government institution, I will tell you, the people who want to steal, the greedy people, are not that many. There are a lot of guys who just want to do their job. You want to go to the office, you want to do your job, do it well, do it honestly. Pay people for honest work. A lot of them, a majority of them in fact. This assumption that everyone in government is corrupt is actually not true. There are a lot of people who are not corrupt. But you find yourself in a system, that if you are not corrupt, you are the bad one.
Because everyone else is.
Because everyone else is stealing. So you are the bad one. And the people who are stealing 99% of government staff just take their salary. They're the people that if salary delays for 5 days, they are stuck. They have nowhere. And they have loans, they have mortgages, they have SACCO loans. Their salary doesn't even get to their account. You're going to pay SACCO loans and all these other things. And they do honest work. There are few with very high responsibility over money, usually, or over inspection of projects, with engineers on roads, that then cut corners. Now, those corners usually cost us quite a bit. If you are procuring medicine, and you procure medicine that is substandard, because you got a kickback, someone comes to the hospital and they have an acute infection. The doctor has belief that if you give them that intravenous injection of antibiotics, they'll get better within 4 to 6 hours. The drug is counterfeit. They give it and they leave, hoping that their patient will be recovering within 6 hours. They come back after 6 hours, the patient has died. Because the medicine that the doctor thought was genuine medicine then was counterfeit, because the procurement officer was in a hurry to get a kickback from a friend. So sometimes you look at corruption in terms of, someone has enriched themselves, but a lot of times you don't look at the consequences of that enrichment.
Exactly.
If you're an engineer and you go and you collude with the contractor to do a road that is fairly thin, or that is not properly done, or a bridge that is not properly done, it will collapse when it rains. And it will cost lives. And we've seen this happen. Roads, huge potholes are appearing on a new road within 2-3 weeks. Someone who passed there or who knows that this road is new will not suspect that there's a huge pothole in the middle of the road. They'll come there at 120 kilometers an hour,
and that's what they
hit the pothole and get an accident. So, you look at it, look at what is happening. What happened to the MP from Makodingo? He got sick, he had a diabetic crisis. He was taken near the hospital, they didn't even have oxygen. By the time they go to the mission hospital, he had died. And there's someone who has an inpatient cover of 10 million, and outpatient cover of another 1 million or so. But at that moment, the best insurance cover in this country could not help him, because he could not reach a proper health facility to get treated. So sometimes we sit in our cocoons in Nairobi and think, my house is 5 minutes from Nairobi hospital, literally. So if at the very worst, I'll be in the hospital within 5 minutes. But what happens when you take a drive to Kajiado? Or you are going to Nanyuki with your friends? What happens when you get an accident somewhere between Nanyuki and Nyeri, and there is no health facility nearby? So the corruption should be looked at wholesomely, even from the village. Because the reason, even at the school, your teacher is corrupt. You have 5 teachers, half of them are always absent. That's corruption.
And yet they're paid.
And then they're paid at the end of the month. When they're in the village, that day they take leave because they have to ride their bicycle to the nearest bank. And it's a whole day's process. Then they come back with paraffin, jerrycan of paraffin and all that. It's a ritual. So they only go back to the bank once to collect all the money. Yeah. But you find all these people paid a lot of money to offer services that they do not offer. Yeah. And that is corruption. So it is easy to look at 150 billion or Aaron and Quimaret 63 billion combined. It is easy to look at it and think that is the worst corruption ever. But sometimes a nurse just sitting at the triage at an accident emergency, seeing a patient being brought and not bothering, that is corruption too. Yeah, because
I think we've looked at it mainly as part of economic crimes because of the, how major it is when you think about these billions of shillings. Like now we're talking about 224 billion shillings.
That's a lot of money. But also, when you talk about value of cases, it doesn't necessarily mean that 224 billion was stolen. It just means that contracts and tenders involving those amounts of money have major questions. Yeah. Maybe the tender was worth 50 billion and the work was actually done. But someone made 10 billion shillings out of it. What we want as a country is to move to a point where wherever you see public money having been spent, there is value for that money. Because even lack of value for the money is a problem in itself. Yeah. And usually you lack value when someone wants to get a kickback so that they inflate the tender price to accommodate for the amount of money they're going to be given. Because even the suppliers have to pay taxes. And the taxes there's income tax at 30%, you have to pay VAT and all those things. So of course, if you give me a contract for $1 million and you want 200,000, I may not be able to give it to you. So then you inflate it to 1.5 million so that you can cover for the amount of money you're going to give. Yeah? And that is part of the problem. That's actually the biggest problem.
I want us to talk about the Corruption Perception Index, because we can speak about that report which was released in 2019. And in this report, we're looking at different countries, especially East and Central Africa. But when we look at East Africa, Kenya and Uganda, they're among the top 3, and among the least corrupt countries are countries like Rwanda, So what is it that we are really doing wrong when we compare ourselves to a country even like Rwanda? Where do you think we're going wrong as a country?
Rwanda is a very small country. The Rwanda economy is the size of Westlands.
Because it's a small economy.
It's
so they can't be as corrupt as us.
If you have 10,000 shillings, you are usually when you receive money. If you got 100,000 shillings today, okay, maybe ladies might be better savers, but it only hits you that the money is running out when it's 10,000. It's fairly easy to monitor little monies in an economy like Rwanda. Kenya is the largest economy in this region. Literally, the largest economy, I think, number 4 in number 3 in sub-Saharan Africa, number 4 or 5 in the whole of Africa. So we are a huge economy, and a lot of things are happening. And we usually, because we've lagged behind for a very long time, we are trying to catch up with infrastructural projects. So we're building roads, we're building hospitals, we're putting up buildings for government institutions, we are putting up a lot of these things. And whenever there is a huge amount of capital projects being done in a country that is morally as corrupt as ours, then of course a lot of money is likely to be lost. It is not good company. I would have expected that Uganda was actually better, but you see, it's a dictatorship. It's a dictatorship, so I mean,
you'd expect it.
You'd expect. We are far much more open than a lot of the other countries. Actually, we are the most open of all those countries in the East African region. We are open, so there's a little bit more questioning, a little bit more media attention, even social media attention. What that has done, I don't think we are more corrupt now. I think we are just more.
It's more outspoken.
Information is out there. It's out there, and the highest office in the land has in fact were accepted that there is corruption.
Yes.
You see, during Moi's time, Moi himself never accepted. Even when the Western media was on him, they never accepted that we are corrupt. Because of that corruption was at that level. At this level, even the highest office in the land has identified corruption as a proper national emergency that needs to be dealt with from all angles. And because of the attention that we've given it, the media and even government itself has given it, it is fairly easy to think. And perception is what people think. If everybody is saying we are corrupt.
And you can imagine how many times even corruption cases, just last year, even in the media, it was being covered by Western media. You find the courts are full you ask, you're like, which media house is this? You hear SABC, you're like, SABC.
Exactly. And
You
it is because the president decided, yeah, that if he does nothing else, the war on graft is something that he must. If he doesn't win, he must live on course, yeah, on a course that you cannot then, on a trajectory you can't bring back, yeah. And it was helpful that the people that he got into office, because there are a lot of new office holders as well. NIS got a new director general, DSCI got a new director,
yes.
ODPP got a new director,
EACC.
EACC got a new director, IG is new.
Exactly.
So this new team that is brought together has far much more focus. Yeah.
When we think about the way the government is fighting corruption now, would you say should there be a difference in the way the language they're deploying in terms of how they're fighting it? How outspoken they are, and some of the approaches that we've even spoken about here. Do you think there should be a difference, or is the way they're going the right way?
I think we could do better in terms of the public communication aspect of corruption. Like we were just sharing, a lot of Kenyans think corruption is when you take billions of shillings, when you do a heist of billions of shillings. The perception out there, in fact, is that if you are a senior government officer, you have a safe somewhere that has a lot of public money that you can just go and when people think about looting, that is what they imagine. They imagine there is a safe somewhere of government money, of billions that you can go and cut away in. It's far much more complex than that. But I would like to see a human face to the war on graft. Yeah. If a court clerk is arrested for demanding 3,500, someone at the immigration department takes 100,000 shillings to issue an ID to a foreigner, to a Somali guy, for example, yeah, who ends up to be a terrorist. We should focus on the terrorism. Because part of even our border is extremely corrupt. You give 10,000 shillings, the chief will write that you're a resident of that area, you get an ID. Yeah? The effect of that, when a terrorist attack happens at Westgate,
yes,
yeah, and these are guys who corrupted their ways into getting into Kenya, yeah, and you can see not just the cost in life, the 67 people that are lost, at Westgate, the cost in terms of destruction of property, but also in terms of our perception internationally. If every day you have guys holding hotels captive and major shopping malls captive, nobody's going to come to the country. And we're a country that is highly import dependent. If you don't have dollars, you're not going to. The balance of trade, if it's as bad as it is, you're not going to benefit. So if KEMSA is procuring substandard drugs, we shouldn't look at it as a COVID millionaire somewhere. Yeah. We should look at it as a nurse lacking PPE in Matungo sub-district hospital. Yeah? Which then leads to both them and their patients dying. You should look at it as a road getting a pothole somewhere in the middle of Turkana, yeah, that then sweeps people because the bridge collapsed. So I would like to see, from a PR perspective, I think the prosecution they're doing well, they have taken the right direction. But we need Kenyans from our side. And the only way to see it stop is to educate the public to understand, yeah, that even you walking barefoot is because of corruption. Otherwise, you would have gotten a job that would have paid you some money to buy shoes. Yeah, so I think public communications need to do a bit better from everyone, from the multi-agency task team, EACC, ODPP, even DCI, even generally from the presidency and government, so that we can marshal public support. Because these Kenyans know, they know who is building a new house, yeah, who is driving which car, wanajua hiyo ghorofa inakonga ya nani, na nani earns 150,000 shillings a month. They know. And until we get wananchi to our side to be to the level where you walk into a rambi with 1 million shillings and they're asking you where the money came from, yet your salary is 100,000. Until we get to that point, this war cannot be won.
Very interesting conversation. We have been joined by Dr. Washingtone, Makodingo, and we've been talking about the fight against corruption, a conversation that needs to continue in very different sources, very different fronts, not just on this podcast, but also everywhere else, really. Thank you so much for joining us for this podcast episode. We'll see you again next time. My name is Mel Miendo, and this has been Pass the Mic, Let's Talk, an initiative by Jade Communications through the Africa Center for Ideas program.